The wind blows where it wills, and you hear the sound of it, but you do not know whence it comes or whither it goes. So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit. Into this happy night, in secret, seen of none, nor saw I aught, without other light or guide, save that which in my heart did burn. Letter 1. The Magician. Dear unknown friend, the words of the Master, cited above, have served me the key for opening the door to comprehension of the first major arcanum of the tarot, the Magician, which is, in turn, the key to all the other major arcana. This is why I have put them as an epigraph to this letter. And then I have cited a verse from the Song of the Soul of St. John of the Cross, because it has the virtue of awakening the deepest layers of the soul, which one has to appeal to when the concern is the first arcanum of the tarot, and, consequently, all the major arcana of the tarot. For the major arcana of the tarot are authentic symbols, that is, they are magic, mental, psychic, and moral operations, awakening new notions, ideas, sentiments, and aspirations, which means to say that they require an activity more profound than that of study and intellectual explanation. It is therefore in a state of deep contemplation, and always ever deeper, that they should be approached. And it is the deep and intimate layers of the soul which become active and bear fruit when one meditates on the arcana of the tarot. Therefore this night, of which St. John of the Cross speaks, is necessary, where one withdraws oneself in secret, and into which one has to immerse oneself each time that one meditates on the arcana of the tarot. It is a work to be accomplished in solitude, and is all the more suitable for recluses. The major arcana of the tarot are neither allegories nor secrets, because allegories are, in fact, only figurative representations of abstract notions, and secrets are only facts, procedures, practices, or whatever doctrines that one keeps to oneself for a personal motive, since they are able to be understood and put into practice by others to whom one does not want to reveal them. The major arcana of the tarot are authentic symbols. They conceal and reveal their sense at one and the same time, according to the depth of meditation. That which they reveal are not secrets, that is, things hidden by human will, but are arcana, which is something quite different. An arcanum is that which it is necessary to know in order to be fruitful in a given domain of spiritual life. It is that which must be actively present in our consciousness, or even in our subconsciousness, in order to render us capable of making discoveries, engendering new ideas, conceiving of new artistic subjects. In a word, it makes us fertile in our creative pursuits, in whatever domain of spiritual life. An arcanum is a ferment, or an enzyme, whose presence stimulates the spiritual and the psychic life of man. and it is symbols which are the bearers of these ferments or enzymes, and which communicate them. If the mentality and morality of the recipient is ready, that is, if he is poor in spirit and does not suffer from the most serious spiritual malady, self-complacency. Just as the Arcanum is superior to the secret, so is the mystery superior to the Arcanum. The mystery is more than a stimulating ferment. It is a spiritual event, comparable to physical birth or death. It is a change of the entire spiritual and psychic motivation, or a complete change of the plane of consciousness. The 7 sacraments of the Church are the prismatic colours of the white light of one sole mystery of sacrament, known as that of the second birth, which the Master pointed out to Nicodemus in the nocturnal initiation conversation which he had with him. It is this which Christian Hermeticism understands by the Great Initiation. It goes without saying that nobody initiates anyone else. If we understand by initiation the mystery of the second birth or the Great Sacrament, this initiation is operative from above and has the value and duration of eternity. The initiator is above, and here below one meets only the fellow pupils, and they recognize each other by the fact that they love one another. There are no longer any more masters, because there is only one sole master. Who is the initiator above? To be sure, there are always masters who teach their doctrines, and also initiates who communicate some of the secrets which they possess to others, who thus become in their turn the initiates. But all this has nothing to do with the mystery of the Great Initiation. For this reason, Christian Hermeticism, insofar as it is a human concern, initiates no one. Amongst Christian Hermeticists, nobody assumes for himself the title and the function of initiator or master. For all are fellow pupils, and each is master of each in some respect, just as each is a pupil of each in some respect. We cannot do better than to follow the example of St. Anthony the Great, who, according to St. Athanasius in the Life of the Saint, subjected himself in all sincerity to the pious men whom he visited, and made it his endeavour to learn for his own benefit just how each was superior to him in zeal and ascetic practice. He observed the graciousness of one, the earnestness at prayer in another, studied the even temper of one, and the kind-heartedness of another, fixed his attention on the vigils kept by one, and on the studies pursued by another, admired for his patient endurance, another for his fasting and sleeping on the ground, watched closely this man's meekness and the forbearance shown by another, and in one and all alike he marked especially devotion to Christ and the love they had for one another. Having thus taken his fill, he would return to his own place of asceticism. Then he assimilated in himself what he had obtained from each, and devoted all his energies to realizing in himself the virtues of all. It is the same conduct which must be applied by the Christian Hermeticist in that which concerns knowledge and science, natural, historical, philological, philosophical, theological, symbolical, and traditional. It amounts to learning the art of learning. Now, it is the arcana which stimulate us and at the same time guide us in the art of learning. In this sense, the major arcana of the tarot are a complete, entire, invaluable school of meditation, study, and spiritual effort, a masterly school in the art of learning. Dear unknown friend, Christian hermeticism therefore has no pretension to rival either religion or unofficial or official science. He who is searching here for the true religion, the true philosophy, or the true science is looking in the wrong direction. Christian hermeticists are not masters but servants. They do not have the pretension, that is in any case somewhat puerile, of elevating themselves above the holy faith of the faithful, or above the fruits of the admirable efforts of workers in science, or above the creations of artistic genius. Hermeticists are not guarding the secret of future discoveries in the sciences. They do not know, for example, just as everyone at present is ignorant of it, the effective remedy against cancer. Moreover, they would be monsters if they were to guard the secret of the remedy against this bane of humanity without communicating it. No, they do not know it, and they will be the first to recognize the superiority of the future benefactor of the human race, that savant who will discover this remedy. Likewise, they recognize without reserve the superiority of a Francis of Assisi, and of many others, who is a man of the so-called exoteric faith. They know also that each sincere believer is potentially a Francis of Assisi. Men and women of faith, of science, and of art are their superiors in many essential points. Hermeticists know it well and do not flatter themselves to be better, to believe better, to know better, or to be more competent. They do not secretly guard a religion, which to them is appropriate, to replace the existing religions, or a science to replace the current sciences, or arts to replace the fine arts of today or yesterday. That which they possess does not comprise any tangible advantage or objective superiority with regard to religion, science, and art. What they possess is only the communal soul of religion, science, and art. What is this mission of conserving the communal soul of religion, science, and art? I am going to reply with a concrete example. You know without doubt, dear unknown friend, that many, and several of them are writers, in France, Germany, England, and elsewhere, promulgate the doctrine of the so-called two churches, the Church of Peter and the Church of John, or of two epochs, the epoch of Peter and the epoch of John. You know also that this doctrine teaches the end, more or less at hand, of the Church of Peter, or above all of the papacy, which is its visible symbol, and that the spirit of John, the disciple loved by the Master, he who leaned on his breast and heard the beating of his heart, will replace it. In this way it teaches that the exoteric Church of Peter will make way for the esoteric Church of John, which will be that of perfect freedom. Now John, who submitted himself voluntarily to Peter as leader or prince of the apostles, did not become his successor after his death, although he outlived Peter by many years. The beloved disciple who listened to the beating of the Master's heart was, is, and always will be the representative and guardian of this heart, and as such he was not, is not, and never will be the leader or head of the Church. Because just as the heart is not called upon to replace the head, so is John not called upon to succeed Peter. The heart certainly guards the life of the body and the soul, but it is the head which makes decisions, directs, and chooses the means for the accomplishment of the tasks of the entire organism, head, heart, and limbs. The mission of John is to keep the life and soul of the Church alive until the second coming of the Lord. This is why John has never claimed and never will claim the office of directing the body of the Church. He vivifies this body, but he does not direct its actions. Now, Emeticism, the living emetic tradition, guards the communal soul of all true culture. I must add, emeticists listen to, and now and then hear, the beating heart of the spiritual life of humanity. They cannot do otherwise than live as guardians of the life and communal soul of religion, science, and art. They do not have any privilege in any of these domains. Saints, true scientists, and artists of genius are their superiors. But they live for the mystery of the communal heart, which beats within all religions, all philosophies, all arts, and all sciences, past, present, and future. And inspired by the example of John, their beloved disciple, they do not pretend, and never will pretend, to play a directing role in religious, science, art, in social or political life. But they are constantly attentive so as not to miss any occasion to serve religion, philosophy, science, art, the social and political life of humanity, and to this to infuse the breath of life of their communal soul, analogous to the administration of the sacrament of Holy Communion. Emeticism is, and is only, a stimulant, a ferment, or an enzyme in the organism of the spiritual life of humanity. In this sense, it is itself an arcanum, that is to say, the antecedent of the mystery of the second birth, or the great initiation. This is the spirit of Emeticism, and it is in this spirit that we return to the first major arcanum of the tarot. A young man, wearing a large hat in the form of a lemniscate, standing behind a small table on which were arranged a yellow painted vase, 3 small yellow discs, another 4 red discs in 2 piles, each divided down the middle by a line, a red beaker with 2 dice, a knife withdrawn from its sheath, and lastly a yellow bag for carrying these various objects. The young man, who is the magician, holds a rod in his right hand, from the standpoint of the observer, and a ball or yellow object in his left. He holds these 2 objects with perfect ease, without clasping them or showing any other signs of tension, encumbrance, haste, or effort. What he does with his hands is with perfect spontaneity. It is easy play and not work. He himself does not follow the movement of his hands. His gaze is elsewhere. Such is this card, that the series of symbols, that is to say, the revealers of the arcana, which is the game of tarot, is opened by an image representing a player of tricks, a magician or juggler who plays, is truly astonishing. How may this be explained? The first arcanum, the principle underlying all the other 21 major arcana of the tarot, is that of the rapport of personal effort and of spiritual reality. It occupies the first place in the series because if one does not understand it, that is, take hold of it in cognitive and actual practice, one would not know what to do with all the other arcana. For it is the magician who is called to reveal the practical method relating to all the arcana. He is the arcanum of the arcana, in the sense that he reveals that which is necessary to know and to will in order to enter the school of spiritual exercises whose totality comprises the game of tarot, in order to be able to derive some benefit therefrom. In fact, the first and fundamental principle of esotericism, that is, of the way of experience of the reality of the spirit, can be rendered by the formula: learn at first concentration without effort, transform work into play, make every yoke that you have accepted easy, and every burden that you carry light. This counsel or command, or even warning, however you wish to take it, is most serious. This is attested by its original source, namely the words of the Master himself: "My yoke is easy, and my burden is light." Let us examine in succession the three parts of this formula in order to penetrate the arcanum of active relaxation or effort without effort. Firstly, learn at first concentration without effort. What is this in a practical and theoretical sense? Concentration, as the faculty of fixing maximum attention on a minimum amount of space, is the practical key to all success in every domain. Modern pedagogy and psychotherapy, the schools of prayer and spiritual exercises, Franciscan, Carmelite, Dominican, and Jesuit, occult schools of every type, and, lastly, ancient Hindu yoga, all approaches are in agreement about this. Patanjali, in his classic work on yoga, formulates in his first sentence the practical and theoretical essence of yoga, the first arcanum, or the key of yoga, as follows: Yoga, Citta, Vritti, Nirodha. Yoga is the suppression of the oscillations of the mental substance. Yoga Sutras 1.2. Or, in other terms, the art of concentration. For the oscillations, the vritti of the mental substance, citta, take place automatically. This automatism in the movements of thought and imagination is the opposite of concentration. Now, concentration is only possible in a condition of calm and silence, at the expense of the automatism of thought and imagination. The to be silent therefore precedes the to know, the to will, and the to dare. This is why the Pythagorean school prescribed 5 years silence to beginners or hearers. One dared to speak there only when one knew and was able to, after having mastered the art of being silent, that is to say, the art of concentration. The prerogative to speak belonged to those who no longer spoke automatically, driven by the game of the intellect and imagination, but who were able to suppress it owing to the practice of interior and exterior silence, and who knew what they were saying, again thanks to the same practice. The silentium, practiced by Trappist monks, and prescribed for the time of retreat, generally to all those who are taking part, is only the application of the same true law. Yoga is the suppression of the oscillations of the mental substance, or concentration is the willed silence of the automatism of the intellect and imagination. There are nevertheless two sorts of concentration to be distinguished, which are essentially different. The one is disinterested concentration, and the other is interested concentration. The first is due to the will free of enslaving passions, obsessions, and attachments, whereas the other is the result of a dominating passion, obsession, or attachment. A monk absorbed in prayer and an enraged bull are, the one and the other, concentrated. But the one is in the peace of contemplation, whilst the other is carried away by rage. Strong passions, therefore, realize themselves as a high degree of concentration. Thus, gluttons, misers, arrogant people, and maniacs occasionally achieve a remarkable concentration. But, truth to tell, it is not a matter of concentration, but rather obsession in connection with such people. True concentration is a free act in light and in peace. It presupposes a disinterested and detached will, for it is the condition of the will which is the determining and decisive factor in concentration. This is why yoga, for example, demands the practice of yama and niyama, yama being the first rules of moral conduct, niyama the 5 rules of mortification, before the preparation of the body, through respiration and posture, for concentration, and the practices of the 3 degrees of concentration itself, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, concentration, meditation, and contemplation. Both St. John of the Cross and St. Teresa of Avila do not tire of repeating that the concentration necessary for spiritual prayer is the fruit of moral purification of the will. It is therefore useless to strive to concentrate oneself if the will is infatuated with something else. The oscillations of the mental substance will never be able to be reduced to silence if the will itself does not infuse them with its silence. It is the silenced will which affects the silence of thought and imagination in concentration. This is why the great ascetics are also the great masters of concentration. All this is obvious and stands to reason. However, what occupies us here is not just concentration in general, but particularly and especially concentration without effort. What is this? Look at a tightrope walker. He is evidently completely concentrated, because if he were not, he would fall to the ground. His life is at stake, and it is only perfect concentration which can save him. Yet do you believe that his thought and his imagination are occupied with what he is doing? Do you think that he reflects and that he imagines, that he calculates and that he makes plans with regard to each step that he makes on the rope? If he were to do that, he would fall immediately. He has to eliminate all activity of the intellect and of the imagination in order to avoid a fall. He must have suppressed the oscillations of the mental substance in order to be able to exercise his skill. It is the intelligence of his rhythmic system, the respiratory and circulatory system, which replaces that of his brain during his acrobatic exercises. In the last analysis, it is a matter of a miracle, from the point of view of the intellect and the imagination, analogous to that of Saint Dionysius, apostle of the Gauls and first bishop of Paris, whom tradition identifies with Saint Dionysius the Areopagite, disciple of Saint Paul. In particular, he was beheaded with the sword before the statue of Mercury, contesting his faith in the Holy Trinity. And at once the body of Dionysius stood erect, and took his head in its hands, and with an angel guiding it, and a great light going before, it walked for 2 miles, from the place called Montmartre to the place where, by its own choice, and by the providence of God, it now reposes. It's from the Golden Legend. Now, the tightrope walker, he too has the head, that is to say, the intellect and imagination, served for the time of the exercise of his skill, and he also walks from one point to another, carrying his head in his hands, under the guidance of another intelligence than that of his head, which acts through the body's rhythmic system, For the tightrope walker, the juggler, and the magician, their skill and ability are, fundamentally, analogous to the miracle of Saint Dionysius, because with them, as with Saint Dionysius, it is a matter of transposing the centre of directing consciousness from the head to the chest, from the cerebral system to the rhythmic system. Concentration without effort is the transposition of the directing centre of the brain to the rhythmic system, from the domain of the mind and imagination to that of morality and the will. The great hat in the form of a lemniscate which the magician wears, like his attitude of perfect ease, indicates this transposition. For the lemniscate is not only the symbol of infinity, but also that of rhythm, of the respiration and circulation. It is the symbol of eternal rhythm, or the eternity of rhythm. The magician therefore represents the state of concentration without effort, that is, the state of consciousness where the centre directing the will has descended, though in reality it is elevated, from the brain to the rhythmic system, where the oscillations of the mental substance are reduced to silence and to rest, no longer hindering concentration. Concentration without effort, that is to say, where there is nothing to suppress, and where contemplation becomes as natural as breathing and the beating of the heart, is the state of consciousness, that is, thought, imagination, feeling, and will, of perfect calm, accompanied by the complete relaxation of the nerves and the muscles of the body. It is the profound silence of desires, of preoccupations, of the imagination, of the memory, and of discursive thought. One may say that the entire being becomes like the surface of calm water, reflecting the immense presence of the starry sky and its indescribable harmony. And the waters are deep, they are so deep, and the silence grows, ever increasing. What silence! Its growth takes place through regular waves which pass, one after the other, through your being. One wave of silence followed by another wave of more profound silence, then again a wave of still more profound silence. Have you ever drunk silence? If in the affirmative, you know what concentration without effort is. To begin with, there are moments, subsequently minutes, then quarters of an hour, for which complete silence or concentration without effort lasts. With time, the silence or concentration without effort becomes a fundamental element always present in the life of the soul. It is like the perpetual service at the church of Sacré-Cœur de Montmartre, which takes place whilst in Paris one works, one trades, one amuses oneself, one sleeps, one dies. It is in like manner that a perpetual service of silence is established in the soul, which continues all the same when one is active, when one works, or when one converses. This zone of silence, being once established, you can draw from it both for rest and for work. Then you will have not only concentration without effort, but also activity without effort. It is precisely this that comes to expression in the second part of our formula, transform work into play. The changing of work, which is a duty, into play, is effected as a consequence of the presence of the zone of perpetual silence, where one draws from a sort of secret and intimate respiration, whose sweetness and freshness accomplishes the anointing of work and transforms it into play. For the zone of silence does not only signify that the soul is fundamentally at rest, but also, and rather, that there is contact with the heavenly or spiritual world, which works together with the soul. He who finds silence in the solitude of concentration without effort is never alone. He never bears alone the weights that he has to carry. The forces of heaven, the forces from on high, are there taking part from now on. In this way, the truth stated by the third part of the formula, make every yoke that you have accepted easy, and every burden that you carry light, itself becomes experience. For silence is the sign of real contact with the spiritual world, and this contact in turn always engenders the influx of forces. This is the foundation of all mysticism, all gnosis, all magic, and all practical esotericism in general. All practical esotericism is founded on the following rule. It is necessary to be one in oneself, concentration without effort, and one with the spiritual world, to have a zone of silence in the soul, in order for a revelatory or actual spiritual experience to be able to take place. In other words, if one wants to practice some form of authentic esotericism, be it mysticism, gnosis, or magic, it is necessary to be the magician, that is, concentrated without effort, operating with ease as if one were playing, and acting with perfect calm. This, then, is the practical teaching of the first arcanum of the tarot. It is the first counsel, commandment, or warning concerning all spiritual practice. It is the Aleph of the alphabet of practical rules of esotericism. And just as all numbers are only aspects, multiples of unity, so are all other practical rules communicated by the other arcana of the tarot only aspects and modalities of this basic rule. Such is the practical teaching of the magician. What is its theoretical teaching? I think that will be the next reading.